All right, we are live here at Netroots Nation with the Matthew Filipowicz Show. I'm talking to my good friend Robin Marty. You can find Robin's work at robinmarty.com and on Twitter at Robin Marty. Robin Marty, thanks for talking with me today.
Thanks for having me back, Matt.
All right, so Robin, you have a story coming out on Cosmo on a Planned Parenthood that is opening up in Richmond, Minnesota. And it's not even what the crazy people would consider a normal Planned Parenthood. There's actually something a little different about this Planned Parenthood and how the right wing is responding to us. Tell us what's going on.
Right. The new clinic that's opening up in Richfield, Minnesota is actually going to be just a sexual health clinic. So it's family planning. It's going to have birth control. It's going to have pap smears. It's going to have all of the regular sexual health things that you need. This is not a clinic that's going to be offering abortions. But because it's a Planned Parenthood, the people on the right are just as adamant that this not exist as it is that any abortion clinics not exist. What we have out in Minnesota is a group known as Pro-Life Action Ministries. They're a so-called sidewalk counseling group, and they have already begun protesting the clinic. They've protested it on opening day. They've had people outside of the clinic, and now what's really interesting is they are going out into the neighborhood and they're leafletting the neighborhood to ensure that the neighborhood understands that this dirty, immoral birth control is suddenly available in their neighborhood and conveniently there.
Wow.
The neighborhood has been not impressed. They've already reported that somebody has called up their phone number and offered to break their legs if they ever leave anything on their doorstep again. So needless to say, this is not a neighborhood that's really going to care that much. Richfield is a first ring suburb of Minneapolis. It's slightly more conservative than Minneapolis, but this is Minnesota. We don't really get that conservative, and we all love our birth control. So the idea that they're going to try and take it to the neighborhood, it's just a ridiculous one, but it shows what they're going to do when they don't have abortion clinics that they can target anymore. And with so many clinics disappearing, birth control is the same thing to them. So that's where they're heading next.
Yeah, that's so wild. And again, it's something that all people on this issue have always been saying, that it's not really about abortions. It's really about controlling of women. It's all about, it's their just kind of horrible just sexism of trying to, and here you have an example. This does not have abortions, but they're actually still protesting it just because it's providing birth control to people. That's wild.
Right, and their excuse behind it is the fact that sure, it's not actually providing abortions, but it's going to refer for abortions. It's going to offer emergency contraception, which they still say is abortion in a pill. Yeah. Which obviously it's not. It stops an egg from being released, so that's about as contraception as you can get. But because they don't see any sort of different, and because it's not really about the abortion, it's not about the birth control, it's about the idea of people having sex without it being procreative. And you'll hear people like Eric Erickson say something about sex without consequences. Do people really want pregnancy to be a consequence? Isn't it supposed to be something that you're excited about and this joy that you bring into your life? I have 3 kids. I love my children.
Yeah.
I don't consider them consequences. I consider them a part of my growing family, and now that I'm not going to have any more, I'm happy that that's no longer going to be a pressure. But I'm not going to stop having sex with my husband because I can't procreate anymore.
Well, yeah, but the Bible says that maybe you should. Do you ever think about that though? That maybe you should.
The Bible also says that maybe I should get him a handwife so he can make a couple more babies, and I'm not really that comfortable with that either.
Well, maybe you should do that too.
No. I hope my husband's not listening. That's not happening.
You know, actually, I actually haven't talked to you since these amazing Supreme Court rulings.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like letting you go on that. Do you want to tell us your general take?
I have obviously issues with the Hobby Lobby ruling, as everybody else does. One of the things that people aren't talking so much about with the Hobby Lobby ruling is actually how clever the Supreme Court was releasing it when they did, because everybody stopped talking about the buffer zone.
Yeah.
The buffer zone ruling is probably one of the most important Supreme Court rulings that we're going to see, because what it's essentially done is taken all of the teeth out of the FACE Act as well. The FACE Act is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrance Act. And what they're saying is that federally, people are going to have to wait until clinics have already no longer been accessible, that people have completely blocked off the access before you can do anything to stop that. That's a huge issue, especially in the more rural and red states that I go to, where an abortion clinic is maybe the only one that's within 3-4 hours of a drive, where you have multiple waiting periods. And so when pregnant people are trying to access these clinics, they need to be able to get in easily and without intimidation. All of the teeth have been taken out of any potential to make that easy for them.
I know there's been a lot of closings, and a lot of southern states have had just a whole lot of closings recently. What are like the states that have like the worst access in the country? Like, what are the ones that are just like that it's next to impossible to find?
We have a number of states that are pretty bad. We have 6 states at this point that are down to just one clinic. Mississippi is one that everybody knows a lot about, but one that's really going to be on everybody's radar very soon is Missouri, which the governor managed to veto a 72-hour waiting period on. There's only one clinic in the state, and now they were going to make people wait 72 hours between the first appointment and then coming back to get another appointment.
Wow.
The governor, who is a Democrat, vetoed it. It's a very, very big deal that he vetoed it because he does not veto legislation like that. What he will always do is when there is something that's about reproductive rights, he won't sign it into law, but he just lets it pocket veto. So he lets it go into law without him actually weighing in on it.
Yeah.
That he sat up and said, this is too much, that is huge. Unfortunately, we've heard that there's going to be a veto override and that it's probably going to start happening soon, that the pressure is going to mount for that. If that happens, there is a very strong possibility that people are going to just bypass that clinic altogether. In essence, it could make Missouri abortion-free without actually shutting down that clinic.
Wow.
We're also seeing a lot of problems right now in Alabama. We have officially 4 clinics in Alabama. 2 of them are open only because the trap law that's being litigated is still in the process of being litigated. What we haven't been talking about is what's happening to the other 2 clinics down there.
Just remind people what the trap law is.
I'm sorry. A trap law is a targeted regulation of abortion provider. It's basically singling out an abortion provider and saying that their medical procedure is different than any other medical procedure and needs more regulation. What they've done in Alabama is they did a 2-fold trap law where on one hand the physician needs admitting privileges in order to be able to provide abortions. On the other hand, they also regulated things like staircase width, all these other issues that could only be dealt with a lot of money. So there was a challenge to the part that said that physicians need admitting privileges. There was not a challenge to the part that says that you need to rebuild your clinics. What happened in Huntsville, Alabama, which is one of the 2 clinics that can stay open because they have admitting privileges, is that Huntsville had to shut down their clinic, and they just bought and are reopening a new clinic. They had to give up the license in their old clinic, and the reason why was that their staircase was not compliant, and even though there are no procedure rooms upstairs, they had to have a new staircase in order to meet this new law. It was going to cost too much, so they moved to a new place that already has the proper zoning, and they're waiting to get that approved. The city has not approved the new license yet.
Wow.
Without the Huntsville clinic open, that was the only clinic in northern Alabama. I'm talking to activists down there on the ground who are hearing women who want to get abortions, and their choices are they can either go 2.5 hours down to Tuscaloosa, which is still open, but they have to wait 48 hours, so they have to make that trip twice, or they can go 3.5 hours up to Nashville, Tennessee.
Whoa.
And most of the women are choosing to make that trip to Nashville because there's not a waiting period
there.
So this is what we've come down to. Our access is so bad that people are skipping the state in order to get to clinics that aren't even that much more accessible. It's just because you pile a waiting period on top of a trap law, on top of an admitting privileges law, and suddenly you only have these small bastions of cities where abortion is easily attendable.